Hey, it's Vaz here from Aussie Playground and welcome to another unboxing. Today we're going to be looking at yet another Kraton. Yes, this is the third Kraton on the channel and this is most likely going to be the best one because every year ARRMA update their cars and they make them better, bigger, stronger, faster, and this one here is no exception. The Kraton 6S BLX V3, also known as the 2018 edition. Looks exactly the same as the V2, as you can probably tell from the box there, but there is a hint on the box that kind of tells you that this is the updated version, and that's that little front bumper there. Now, don't think that that's the only update that the ARRMA have done. Oh, well, you know, in 2018, we've put a bumper on it now. No, underneath the body, which looks pretty much the same as the one from the previous model, there's actually quite a number of changes, and I'm going to be taking you through all of those changes, some of which you may have already seen in the Italian V3, the unboxing that I did a little while ago. But now I've got my hands on the Kraton, which is, you know, the good all-round basher, and the V2 got pretty much a perfect score from me when I reviewed that car. I'm finding it hard to believe that this one would be inferior to the V2. So let's get rid of the box. Let's have a look at the car. First thing here is the Tactic TTX 300 remote. Of course, I have mentioned these plenty of times. You should already know everything you need to know about these guys. 3-channel radio. You can also tune endpoints via the little toggle switches on the handle there. Runs on 4 AA's, good feel in the hand, no collapsible antennas to break off. And the good thing about these as well is that the receiver actually doesn't have an antenna either. And despite that, there's no issues with range, which I think is fantastic. In the usual little bag of goodies that you get with all your ARRMA cars, there are some additional plugs, XT90 plugs for your batteries. So if you're using different types of connectors, you can actually go with these plugs if you want to. ARRMA have included those. There's also a spare set of pistons in here, so you can actually tune your shocks to the way that you like. High-speed pinion gear. Now, one of the things that I talked about in my Kraton V1 review was that, you know, the box said 60 miles an hour, but you had to go out and buy an additional pinion in order to reach that speed. Sure enough, in the V2s, ARRMA addressed that issue by including the pinion necessary to reach those speeds. And this is the guide that you'll need there if you want to go for that 60 mile an hour on 6S. And then, of course, you've got your usual toolkit. There's a bunch of Allen keys in here, a couple of cross wrenches, a big one for you taking out the wheel nuts, and another one for the little tiny screws. Also a speed chart in here so that you can sort of get an idea of what sort of speed you're going to be doing based on the gearing and the batteries that you're going to be running. And then, of course, the all-important user manual on the back, which is very comprehensive, as I've mentioned and showed plenty of times in the past. That is a really good thing to hang on to, because if you ever need any parts or need to do any maintenance or tune your ESC and all that sort of stuff, all that information is in the manual. Just go back to that and I'm sure you'll be fine. Now, for the car, this is what we all want to see. Now, of course, from the outside, it looks very much the same as the previous model. Those of you who perhaps aren't familiar with these cars will be thinking, well, this looks like, what's the difference? I mean, aside from that little guy there, there really isn't a lot of differences here. Body color scheme remained the same, tires have remained the same, wheels have been the same since the V1. And of course, you know, the spoiler's the same. There is a tiny little bumper on the back here as well, which is kind of cool that they've added that on. But once we take out the body, that's when things really get interesting. So I'm going to quickly take this off here, so just give me a second whilst I quickly remove these pins. And there we have it. The body, same as the other ones. They haven't gone for the thicker body like you'll find on the Outcast and the Phazon. So these has remained the same. Hopefully that'll change in the future. And then, of course, you've got don't just bash, blast on the underside of the roof there, which is kind of cool. One thing I did see from ARRMA, you know, they've got these little kind of scuff tape going on here on both sides of the body. This is to stop paint from rubbing off from, you know, when the body's rubbing on the chassis. One thing I'd like to see them do with the Kraton bodies is actually do what they did with the Outcast and put a couple of little bits of this tape around the holes that go on the body posts, because what I found with my V2 Kraton as well as my Outcast, the front holes have got that little bit of tape, which has been great, but the back holes didn't have it and the paint has rubbed off. Of course, I've used that car quite a lot, and I would recommend anybody that doesn't want the paint to rub off from the body posts, put a bit of tape here, some heavy duty tape, cut out the holes with the knife, and then that should protect your body in the long run and stop the paint from rubbing out. Anyway, that's the body there. Let's move on to the chassis because this is all what we really want to see. Now that you got the body off, you'll notice a couple of differences. Number one, these little mud guards here, which were first introduced in the Outcast when I unboxed that truck. Now ARRMA have actually included them on the Kraton, so that is a really good positive thing there because of course it stops debris from getting into the truck. Another thing you'll notice here on the shocks, there are these little plastic pieces here that kind of protect the top of the shock, and I think that's actually going to come in pretty handy because when you do tumble the truck over, the first thing that kind of damages the body are the shocks and the screws that kind of hold the shocks in place. So having that little bit of a plastic piece there will kind of spread the load a bit and hopefully won't pierce the body and cause it any major damage. And of course that's in the front shocks as well as the rear shocks. Taking another look at the chassis here, another thing you'll notice is of course the battery tray is now the same as it was, or it is, in the Outcast. This battery tray was first again introduced when I unboxed the Outcast. When I recently unboxed the Italian V3, they had already updated the battery tray on that car. Now they've done it here on the Kraton, and they've done it throughout the entire 1/8 scale line. So your Centon and your Typhon will have that exact same battery tray. Another thing they've done is of course given us a different receiver box. So this little guy here is now kind of a bit more squared off and it's got a little bit more room in there. The previous one was a bit of an odd shape, and I think some people may have complained obviously when they want to use their own personal radios, those radios have slightly larger receivers and they struggle to fit them in there. And I've seen a lot of people as well modify those battery boxes and use other brands to kind of give themselves a little bit more room while still maintaining some kind of waterproof to the truck, so that, you know, obviously the receiver and that doesn't get damaged with debris and water, what have you. The servo mount's another thing they changed, and that's going to be a little bit hard to show, but essentially they have beefed up the surround of the servo mount to kind of stop it from flexing a little bit. Now I don't think they have eliminated the flex entirely, but they've definitely improved it, and that's a big step in the right direction there, because one of the things that a lot of people complained about, and although I never really saw a big issue with it myself, admittedly the servo or the mount does flex a little bit when you put the servo under load. It's just, that's just the way that it is, and it's the design of it. For a basher vehicle, I've never seen that as being terrible as such. I mean, yes, it's a hindrance, not denying that, but I've lived with it for such a long time, since the V1s. Of course, now you've got people like GKA, for example, making aluminium servo mounts that are just amazing pieces of art that you can just take out the plastic one, slot the aluminium one in there, and that problem is eliminated 100%. I think the beefed up servo mount that ARRMA have done here, as I said, is definitely helped. It's an improvement. I just don't think it's eliminated it entirely. But who knows? Like I said, I've dealt with it for quite a long time and I've been pretty happy with it. I think this one here, I'll be fine with it as well. Motor and ESC have remained the same, of course. Another thing they've changed is they've beefed up the bulkheads on the inner side of there and on the back. This I'll have to give you some close-ups of because it's going to be a bit hard to show on camera here. But essentially there's some ribbing there, and that's going to strengthen the back end of that diff bulkhead, both front and rear, for when you do your cartwheels and so forth. When you have those mishaps or hit obstacles, you know, those trees, they jump out of nowhere sometimes, they can never stand still, and when you do have an impact with one of them, hopefully you won't snap the top end of the bulkhead thanks to the beefier plastic that ARRMA have done there. Another thing they've changed is the entire suspension setup of this truck. Now, the shocks on the original Kraton, they were good, they were decent, but the truck sagged quite a lot, and even out of the box the springs were already kind of the shock collars were already wound down, the springs were already a little bit compressed just to try and sustain the weight of the truck. And admittedly I ended up changing out the springs on my Kraton because I needed lift. I needed the truck to sit up where I wanted it to sit and have the freedom to adjust spring tension. This is something that ARRMA have addressed in this truck. So what they've done here is obviously they've beefed up the shocks, and they've done this by doing two things, or actually three things. First off, they've changed the oil. So oil's a little bit thicker on the shocks now. The truck is no longer as soft as it used to be. It's got a little bit more dampness, and it also has a bit more rebound. It has more rebound because they've not only given us longer springs, they've also given us thicker springs. So now the truck can actually sit up a little bit, and you can see here I can put my entire arm underneath the truck. This has considerably more ground clearance than the V2, at least I think it has anyway from memory, because the V2 is now sitting over there, and you know, the shocks have been adjusted now. The truck weighs a little bit more because I've got some T-bone racing bumpers on there, but this is definitely sitting up a lot higher. And to be honest, you know, I've always called this more of a monster truggy. Some people call it a muggy. This is probably the closest to a monster truck that this truggy can look like at the moment, because it is jacked up, it feels a lot beefier, and it just looks the part, you know, having this this raised up body. Now, finally, the last thing that they've changed on the shocks is the shock shafts themselves. Originally, these shock shafts were 3.5 millimeters. They are now 4 millimeters thick. So keep that in mind, because if you're thinking I'll just upgrade my shock shafts to your existing shocks, that's not really going to work, because the previous ones were 0.5 mil shorter or smaller in diameter. So you can probably get away with it if you just buy the bodies and the shafts. That might work. But then I'm thinking you might also need the shock rod ends as well, because if the shock shafts are thicker, then the thread's going to be thicker, I'm assuming. That would be the natural progression of things there. Shock towers have remained the same. The HD wing mount has pretty much remained the same. I've struggled to break a wing mount from day one. I think I only broke one trying to do standing backflips with my Kraton. This was the V1 Kraton on concrete, and I was trying to do a double, and it didn't work out too well, and the thing just flipped, and it hit the concrete real hard, and it snapped the wing mount. But I've heard of people breaking wing mount just by looking at it funny. So, you know, at least these ones, they're a lot beefier, at least since the V2 anyway. And I don't think ARRMA really need to do much to improve those. Chassis braces have changed slightly. I believe that the plastic composition that they used is a little bit different from the previous ones. The overall design of the chassis braces has changed as well, because now the way that they used to work was that the chassis brace had a little locking nut on the base here nearest to the chassis, and then a screw would come in from underneath the chassis and screw onto that locking nut. Sounds all good in theory, however, by putting in that nut into the plastic, into the chassis brace, it weakened it, and you know, people bash these things pretty hard, they take tumbles, and sometimes things go wrong, and it weakened the chassis brace, and sometimes they would break off. Now the screw goes directly into the chassis brace itself, and hopefully that would make it a little bit stronger. And I think that's why they had to change the plastic composition of the braces, so that it could actually hold that screw properly. That's my theory on it anyway. So that's pretty much, I think, everything that they've changed. A couple other minor changes that they did as well. Just these little things here that hold the sway bars in place. They kind of changed the design of those slightly. I think that's meant to make it a little bit easier to tighten the sway bars in position. That's just the theory. Excuse me, that's just the theory I have. I'm not entirely sure. Chassis has remained the same as the V2. But of course, this chassis is quite different from the Italian. The Italian, all the electrics have moved back a little bit. That one is quite unique in its design. It's kind of a standalone unit now compared to all the other ARRMA cars. But the chassis here has pretty much remained the same as the previous model. Roll cage still in the center here, and of course you got your XT90 connectors. They're ready to go for when you want to use your batteries, which is why they give you the extra connectors in the bag, which are the XT90s. All right, enough babbling on, because now that we're coming to the end of this unboxing, and I'm pretty sure I've covered everything that I need to cover. If I've missed anything, please leave it in the comment section below. I hope I haven't. But now I'm actually coming to the end of this unboxing. I do want to kind of give you guys a bit of an important announcement, which I think you may want to listen to. Because right now, believe it or not, I'm actually going to be giving away a Kraton. Yes, right here we have another one. It's not the green one, it's actually a red one, just like mine. there it is. You now have the chance to win one of these bad boys for yourself. And you might be wondering, well, what do I need to do to win one of these beautiful trucks, you know, the latest and greatest from ARRMA? Well, it's very simple. You need to go to the video description where I will have a link in there to an unlisted video. Click on that link, watch the video, and follow the instructions to a T. Do not misstep. Incorrect answers will be deleted from that video, and then the winners will be picked at random, I think on January 1st, 2018. So today is Christmas Day, at least when you are watching this for the first time, it will be Christmas Day 2017. You have 1 week exactly to enter. Feel free to share the video amongst your friends, Facebook forums, whatever it is you want to share the video on. Be sure to hit that like button. Please, I really appreciate it. And also subscribe if you haven't already, because in order for you to win, you do need to be subscribed to the channel. That is the only prerequisite that I will ask in this video, but the rest of the instructions will be in that unlisted video that I mentioned earlier. But that is pretty much it from me. Any questions about the truck, please be sure to leave them in the comment section down below. I'll do my best to get back to you. Check out the video description for links to my social media pages such as Facebook, Instagram, and of course Patreon if you want to jump on board and help out the channel. And I think that's it. I'm going to go charge up some batteries now and get this guy ready to go to the BMX track and give you guys a bit of a running video. That's it. Thank you all very much for watching. Merry Christmas, of course, and I will speak to you all next time.